It's your good buddy Creedmoor, and I really feel like we need to talk. You know what I mean? There's good stuff to talk about. Who needs to talk? Me? I'm gonna do the talking. Y'all can do the listening if you want. Anyway, what's the nature of today's subject? The nature of today's subject is the perspective of pH and soil management when you're a brand new grower and you're just welcoming yourself to the Back to Eden method. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the good, bad, and the ugly, about how things were done in the conventional method. Not the good, maybe just the bad. Anyway, I want to talk about what it takes to really make some substantial gains when it comes to pH compliance with the soils that you're going to be looking into, that you're going to be developing and evolving, and what that means to the plants that you're going to grow. How many of y'all out there, new growers, might be thinking, I'd like to grow some blueberries? Blueberries, great idea. Y'all want to see what that looks like? Okay, I think I can show you. Blueberries, and by the way, they do grow in wood chips, okay? So we're going to go right over here. See this right here? Those are blueberries, okay? More blueberries. All right? Blueberries are in the berry families that love acidic soil. They love acidic earth, so to speak. And they're going to do really well if your earth happens to be compliant already in the acidic range. 5.5, somewhere in that range, is going to be nice for them. Wood chips themselves, they buffer to roughly neutral. Maybe in the range of, say, 6.7 to 7.2, 3 or 4. They do that all on their own, even if you don't do anything to it. So in the case of blueberries, if we're going to make a drop down to, say, 5.5 or maybe 4.8, 4.5, somewhere in that range right there, where they're really happy. And by the way, blackberries are made happy by the same pH range. So if we're going to let them enjoy themselves in our gardens, what should we do? We go out and buy a big gigantic bag of elemental sulfur and we lay that down onto the garden. We can. Absolutely we can. There's no reason why we can't. As a matter of fact, in a second I'm going to turn you around and show you some sections here straight on that sort of the detail that's quite possible, because it's what we did in the early years. We actually used elemental sulfur to get the beds prepped in so that there was some acidity to help counter the neutral pH that we knew would eventually be brought on by the, periodic placement of compost and wood chips. So, as it turns out, much of that wasn't quite as we expected. It didn't pan out the way we thought it would, and there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is soil organic matter. When we increase the amount of soil organic matter, we also increase the habitat for microbes, for worms, for arthropods, for all kinds of insects. Those particular insects are going to change the calculus of growing for us. Those are the types of insects and those are the types of microbes that get involved. The bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, nematodes. These guys get involved in processing soil organic matter. They get involved in processing compost and processing wood chips. And when they're involved in that, they are, just by their very function and involvement, actually mitigating pH insufficiency, creating acids and enzymes and all sorts of glues that bind soil particles together, organic soil particles together, inorganic soil particles together. They can do all of this stuff. They're amazing. Microbes are amazing. But the Back to Eden method is really, really pro-microbe. It is, whether we recognize that or not. When we put down 6-8 inches of wood chips, you're making habitat, you're making hospital zones, you're making restoration efforts towards giving space and habitat to microbes. Those same microbes that go on to protect your fruit-bearing plants, your tomatoes, the same microbes that get to respond to the exudates that are being dropped, the little sugars, the juices that are being dropped from the roots of your plants. It's not just sugars, carbohydrates, and things like that that are being dropped from the roots of your plants. Your plants are actually taking into them bacteria, other forms of microbes are entered into them through root hairs, and they're parsed of their nutrients. And then they are essentially ejected under pressure back out through the root tips into the soil, where they go back out and they forage for things. And, if you're a tomato plant or you're a plant that likes to be attached to things like soil fungi, root fungi, You'll probably already have these relationships established, and they will be attached to your roots, and they will work for you to bring back these microbes, to reinsert them back into your plants, to fix nitrogen, to do all of this good stuff, to process the nutrients that exist in your soils, so that you don't have to be continuously putting salt-based fertilizers on top. You can stop buying salt-based fertilizers once you understand that it's the life that begets the life. It is the life that drives the process of life. It's the life of the soil. So how does that differ when it comes to, the traditional way of laying down some sulfur and laying down some of the other good stuff? What's the other good stuff? Lime? Lime is a sterilant. Yes. Lime is a sterilant. That's all there is to it. And you don't see Paul Gauci using it. He doesn't. Although lime does contain calcium, and calcium is really, really instrumental. But soil organic matter actually manufactures calcium. There, I said it. How does that happen? Basically, it happens when the worms chew up the soil organic matter, and then they excrete calcium carbonate. And calcium carbonate is somewhat more water soluble. It's more assimilable to the plants. The plants love it. Those that eat the plants love it because it makes the fruit so good. When we rely on the soil microbiome, it's like relying on our gut microbiome to digest our food. And that's really, really instrumental in the world of growing plants productively, because the microbes do the job with greater precision than the Creedmoors, than whatever your name is. Microbes can do it on a level that we can only hope to approach. We don't have to approach it if we embellish the organisms that are beneath our feet, if we give them safe places to live and exist, if we keep them somewhat moist. When it's a drought, we might have to add moisture. Yes, it's true. And if we can do that, and we can do that season in and season out, and we can actually take care of them through the hot times by making sure they don't dry out or die from an infernal, from being roasted by that thing, then they will hang on, and they will lead to successive microbes that go on to impart even more resistance in the kinetic chain of growing. They will add to the system microbes that will be super protective, that will impart immunity to the plants, just because there's space, just because there's nutrients, just because the plants are there asking them to exist for them, just because we do no harm. And when we stop harming the soils, when we stop putting sterilants in the soil like lime, I know on the surface it sounds like, well, we're never going to get calcium into the soil again, but come on, that's not true. First of all, just because there's calcium in the soil, it doesn't mean your plants are going to gain access to it. There are other factors that are involved in the plants simply absorbing a hard and coarse mineral like calcium. There are other factors. pH comes into play. So, yeah. Calcium is actually a pH modifier as well. It's in our bones. It's part of making the leaf and the stem strong and have structure, be able to be resistive. The calcium keeps the skin of the plant strong so that piercing insects have a harder time getting into it. It also allows the internal pressures of the leaf and the plant and the phloem and the xylem to raise up sufficiently so that the plants can pack carbohydrates into those fluid-bearing zones. And when the carbohydrates are in high enough concentration, the insects don't forage there. They don't tend to sip the juices from those plants that are super sweet. So when we get a couple of those things working really well for us, usually it means we've involved a sufficient amount of microbiology when we're talking about the Back to Eden method. More often than not, this sort of thing happens even without us knowing. We can just lay some compost and some manure on the ground. We can cover it with some coarse wood chips. We can allow that to produce a shade and cover for the earth. And the earth will begin to heal. It will begin to heal. It's going to become inviting for everything. You name it, okay? It's going to become inviting for the pill bugs. It's going to become inviting for, the Asian jumping worms, the hammerhead worms. It's going to become inviting for everything that's trying to strike a balance in our natural environment. And we have to be willing to accept that. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to champion conditions. You know, we're going to help the soil to go on without introducing more chemicals to it, making it more difficult for the microbes to do their thing. And, you know, it's going to start to change naturally. It's not going to take an enormous amount of time for it to change. It really doesn't. All we have to do is become committed to it. And once we're committed to it, great things happen. If we stay committed to it for 4 seasons, greater things happen. Think about it. If I only grow through the warmest month of the year and I commit myself to facilitating for the microbes, for their hope, their change, their betterment, then I'm going to essentially be culturing a set of microbes that work in that time period. Forget the fall, forget the spring, forget the winter, because I haven't decided to steward those seasons. I haven't decided to go out and say, who of you decides that you want to work on my plants, my cold weather plants, in the dead of winter? Who of you? If I'm only focusing on the summer microbes, I'm not gaining access to the winter microbes. The microbes, while they may be in the same classes, some of them are going to have special preferences for temperature, special preferences for oxygenation, special preferences for moisture content. It's rare that you're going to see a nematode outside of a moist environment because they don't do very good walking around because they don't have legs. They kind of move like a wormy, and they need the moisture. Same thing for bacteria, you know. A lot of these organisms, they can hide underneath biofilms and they can hang out there and they can encysst themselves into a casing, and they can weather the storm. So they'll stay in your soils until the next time the climatology is correct for them. And then once that happens, lo and behold, they become active, they get involved, they get engaged, they start working for you, they start performing their functions in the soil, and you start benefiting from all of that. And the sun grows your plants. Nowhere in this equation, in the Back to Eden method, is it absolutely necessary that we need to haul minerals from one side of the planet to the other side of the planet just to facilitate for pH change. The Heavenly Father has seen fit to afford us with these abilities, these endowments. He's allowed us to have the graces of the microbes. And when we let ourselves understand them and understand that they have functions and that there are really billions and billions and billions of them, and it's really easy to not kill them. It is. It's easy to not kill them. And when we embellish them, when we engage in things like biomimicry, you know, it means we're watching nature and we're doing what Mother Nature does. She applies her fertilizer in the fall, she gives it all winter to become compost, then she puts snow and rain that fractionalizes the nutrients, and they're driven further into the soil where they meet the microbiota, where they meet the digestive forces that are in the soils. And those digestive forces are what are going to bring the nutrients to your plants. So for those of you that are late to the story, late to the show, Creedmoor used to, you see behind me all of this land. This was till and kill land. I don't usually do these types of videos, but I'm giving it a shot. I really am. I'm taking the time and I really want to help somebody. I want y'all to understand. You see that soil behind me, that earth? It's dirt. It's where I used to grow all my food. Now I'm going to turn around. Now I grow all my food there, in soil and wood chips. All right? Right there. I want to sit down and I want to talk about a couple things. In particular, I want to talk about how we test for pH. Okay? I'm going to leave a couple of pictures of this, but I'm going to also show you. This is a Soncure tester. It's a 3-way tester. It tests for pH, for light, and for moisture. Those are 3 simple tests you can administer. We clean the probes off with a Scotch-Brite. That's a brand name, 3M brand name Scotch-Brite. I'm sure there's other manufacturers that make something similar. Feel free to use them. You know, nobody pays me any money. Trust me. I don't get digits for this stuff. This is great. It's simple. It's large. It's easy to read. I'm old. I'm wearing bifocals. You know, I need stuff like this because this makes my life easier. All right? I'm tossing that. Here's one that's a little more sophisticated. This is made by a company called Moisten Land, and it's a 4-way tester. It's a little bit more finicky in that it has this sort of articulating head on it so that you can get it to sense the sunlight from straight up above at 12 o'clock. Guess what? Straight up above at 12 o'clock, the sun is intense. You got all the light you need. Okay? I'm typically using the light testers when I'm questioning whether or not an area might be really good for a full sun plant and there seems to be a little bit of shade. I can get a better idea and a better understanding of how the light emanates through something. This will give me a measure of that. then I can go over somewhere else where the light is proper for a plant, and I can get a measure for that, and I know I can compare the two. It gives me a good idea, baseline for what works. Similar thing for the moisture content, because you know these things vary a little, so I like to keep two of them because one of them is going to give me more accurate reading than the other, and what I'm looking for is the most consistent readings from two devices. I always keep them clean, always wash them, always dry them, and never leave them in the soil. And more importantly, when I'm doing pH testing, I always use pH neutral distilled water. Okay, so distilled water, pH neutral, 7.0. And I don't want bias. If I used an acidic water, there's already going to be a bias that's going to tend to present the results of slightly more acidic than they would be, at least until everything's buffered. If I use water that's alkaline, a pH of 9, and I'm not necessarily growing in alkaline soils, it's going to be a reflection there. Let's talk about that. This is asparagus, okay? Y'all see that? It's the end of the season, so I'm basically letting the ferns do what they do. And the asparagus prefers a mildly alkaline soil, so, you know, that's perfect with wood chips. You don't need to go any further than that. And it puts it right into the range, the pH range, for this particular crop to excel. Not much more has to be done other than putting a little bit of compost on top and a fresh coating of wood chips to keep the weeds down. What else can I say about that? You know, nearby I'll walk in my own garden, my own personal garden, and the next step that you're going to see where I grow is grapes. These grapes want the soil acidic. There's my alarm. The grapes want the soil acidic. And below the grapes, I'm growing, of all things, broccoli. Broccoli wants the soil somewhat alkaline. Yeah, we got to get away from that thing. So I'm going to turn around. We're going to talk about some of this a little bit. Asparagus. Like I was saying before, it prefers it to be pH neutral to a little bit alkaline. I arrange my plants in such a way that the gaps between the pH zones are not too far. Over here, you can see, the plants don't care. That's a tomato. It wants it to be slightly acidic on the pH scale. Doesn't care. It's sandwiched between a plant that appreciates alkaline soil and another plant over there. Y'all see that? That's a brassica. That's broccoli. This is where I grow broccoli every single year. I grow it here every year because the soil grows more and more compliant, of all things, for broccoli. Okay, just above the broccoli, right here closer to me. Onions. Yeah, these particular onions are Egyptian walking onions, and they prefer the soil to be mildly acidic. No problem growing next to something that likes it alkaline. Below them, guess what? Those are muscadine grapes, and they too like it to be acidic. Not mildly, but somewhat more acidic. Certainly more acidic than, well, broccoli. Who else likes it to be a little bit alkaline? Oh, well, look at that, artichoke. But we just passed over one of the three sisters. I can't believe I did that. I just passed over this. This is us aging out and senescing. I can actually see some fruit from here. There is some fruit, but it's zucchini. So that's in the squash family. And that likes the pH to be around 6.8. Mildly acidic also. But remember what we talked about. The chips that you see down there at the bottom are already sitting at neutral once they've buffered out. Let's keep going. There's more brassicas right there. I step in here through there. So I want it alkaline, and I'm a grape. I want it acidic. Let's keep going. Flax. Yeah, flax is pretty flexible, so we'll just skip over that one. But over here, we've got acid lovers growing with more alkaline lovers. And nowhere is this more abundantly evident over here, where you can see these are Brussels sprouts, very old Brussels sprouts, and they're actually growing in the midst of, well, blackberries. So this is a perfect example of the same exact identical soil servicing two completely differing plants. One prefers alkaline soil, one prefers, well, very acidic soil, because the blackberries can handle acidic soil in the 5.5 range, which is significantly more acidic than, well, 7.5 or 8 for the brassicas. And this is all right in the same spot, folks. No, we're not pouring calcium on it. No, we're not pouring lime on it. No, we're not pouring anything else on it. And we have no pH insufficiency issues. The microbes are doing all of the work. Look at the leaves. These leaves are like just loving it when the temperature drops. Really. I mean, if you want to know if it works, look at the plants. They tell you it's working. Here, More brassicas. There's butternut squash on the ground right there. Marigolds. Next to all this, next to the flaxible, more tomatoes. Marigolds. Here we are again. So we've got acid lovers, mildly acid lovers, and we've got more brassicas that like it alkaline. Apple trees. Yeah, it's a different story. You know, more brassicas over here, and right in the midst of the brassicas on the opposite side, look over there. This is where I'm growing all of these self-maintaining, sprawling tomatoes. They're about ready to be composted. There's a couple on the ground right there. We are at the end of that season. Okay? Okay. Here's more. Lettuce. Brassicas. There's more brassicas in here because there's also, radish growing in here. So again, we have two different pH preferences. I'm going to go over here. There's sweet potatoes. These like it acidic. They do great when you grow them right. Oh, my deer sprinkler's going off. I got to move before it gets me wet. But these right here, they love the acidic soil. So they need soil biology that embellishes the pH range that they require to reach fruition. It's turned out to be a decent crop. I use this sprinkler to keep the deer from eating it. More in the greenhouse. Pretty much everything in the greenhouse likes the soil to be relatively acidic. And that's probably why it's on the bottom of the garden, because there is some gradient here. And the acids are essentially, liquids, solvents that can run downhill. So we got a great concentration of them over there. And everything that's in there, again, is perfectly balanced when it comes to a pH perspective. But I'm not doing anything other than getting out of the way of the sprinkler. Pollinator garden, we don't do anything for this. Everything you see here is growing in wood chips. In the middle of that is a little pond. Look at the color of the leaves. We're in a drought. Does it look like there's pH insufficiency here? Let me get you close. You don't believe me. If there was pH insufficiency, it certainly wouldn't look like this. The bee balm wouldn't look like that. None of this stuff would look like this. So, what else can I say? Well, I mean, if you're new, you're a new grower, you're getting involved in the Back to Eden method, and you're coming from a place of conventionalism, it's not going to be easy to immediately perceive what I'm telling you as true. Here you can see one of my crops. This is the lettuce crop, and it cycles in and cycles out. I don't plant them. See the onions? They cycle in, they cycle out. I don't plant them. I don't transplant them. I don't do anything to them. I just take care of the soil, and they grow themselves. They reproduce themselves. Up further than that, you can see oregano. That started as 3 small plants. Now this particular plot measures about 14 foot wide by 8 foot deep. It is solid oregano. We make oregano oil with that. That's how we stay healthy. Every one of these appreciates a slightly different pH range. Now let's take a look at my reality. Red clay, sandstone, pH is around 5. It's hard pan. If I hit it with a hammer, it makes a chink sound. Things don't want to grow in this. Not easily. You almost have to engage it with some form of mechanical tillage in order to make it soft enough to grow your plants in. Why would you do that? You're moving diesel and fuel around again. Grow your cover. We'll talk about that a lot more in the future, growing your own cover. Grow your own wood chips if you have to. Learn to coppice. It's a real word. Grow your own plants because they create the acids and exudates. They create the sugars. They create the environment that we know that we need. And then we don't have to guess about pH insufficiency because our plants will show us that they appreciate what we're doing. Anyway, Creedmoor's run out of time. I think it's been about 17 or 18 minutes coming up on that. And I just want to tell you all thank you for being a part of my journey. If you stuck around this long, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you do happen to subscribe, you find that in your heart to do so, select the bell and make sure that it's set to ring for essentially every video I make. You'll get more information about this stuff. We can get more in detail. And soon I'm going to be talking about seeds, things like that, seed saving. And we'll get together on some cool stuff. Peace and God bless.